Welcome back to the Learning to Be a Christian podcast, where we are going through one question per day in To Be a Christian, which is the official catechism of the Anglican Church in North America, in order to learn and live as Christians in the Anglican way. Today, I'm joined again by Father Ron Offringa, and we are going to be going through question 42. Question 42. So question 42 and its answer. Why do you call God the Father Creator? I call God the Father Creator because He made all things. He creates and sustains all things through His Word and gives life to all creatures through His Spirit. And then it cites Genesis 1:1 to 2:3, along with verse 7, Psalm 104, verses 24 to 30, John 1:1 to 3, Acts 17, 24 through 28, and Colossians 1:16 to 18. I'll turn it over to Father Ron as he shares his thoughts on question 42.
So this last week we were walking through catechesis, and as we were coming to this section on the creed and talking about God and Trinity and all this, one of the questions I posed to people was, where did God come from? It's a question that younger kids often ask, skeptics, people that are wanting to challenge the faith, or even just sometimes people that are curious. Somebody asked, is that more kids that ask that question? I'm like, no, it's everybody asks that question. Right. Because I think in some ways we can recognize, it's one thing to say, maybe we don't know everything about the origins of the universe. That's not that big of a claim. But it's another thing to say, oh, actually, I do know where this all came from. And in particular, people will often argue that if we were going to put God as that starting point, you're not really avoiding an infinite regress, is the claim. And so when we think about what does it mean for God to be creator, for Him to be the source, for Him to be the origin of all things, the claim is not just that God is the one who made all things, but it's actually a claim to say that God is self-sufficient in Himself. That God is, as Aquinas puts it in his first article for the proof of God, that there's a difference between something that's moved and something that is the mover. And so going back to Aristotle, God being the unmoved mover. But I think in particular, it's helpful to note the difference between God in terms of potency and act. So when we talk about potential in things, we usually tend to talk about it positively. You have so much potential, even though that's technically not all that means. Each one of us has the potential to get better or worse. And so the question is not just potency. Do you have the ability to get better or worse? But it's also actuality. When do you actualize those things? So I have the potential to stop recording right now and to unplug everything and walk away. And then there's the actual act of sitting here and recording a podcast. And whereas for us, we're all in shifting between potency and actuality, God is pure act. He is, as He tells Moses, I am that I am. He's the one who is. He simply exists. And so when we talk about God being creator, we're talking about Him being the one who is self-sustaining. He's not contingent. He's not dependent upon anyone else. And from the overflow of His very being, He is life, He is essence itself. He formed and created us, and life then means to actually be with Him and in Him. It's union with Him. That's true life.
I love it. I think it's really important to recognize, and we talked a little bit about contingency and the lack of that with Father Harmon a couple days ago, but I think it's really important to recognize exactly what you're saying, that the main thing, and it's even worth it's important to point out, our catechism is a little bit repetitive and redundant on some of these things, and not because they're just long-winded and need more words to say, but because this is really important to dial down on. I mean, it's important to really zoom in on the fact that the main thing that distinguishes creation from creator is this contingency. I'm not necessary, and you're not necessary, and no one listening is necessary. We we could exist or not. And we exist because God has loved us, and God has imagined us, and God has created us. And God's the only thing that's not like that. The only thing that exists that isn't contingent, that uh, just is, and not based on an act of the will, not but just is. God always has been, and this is the thing that maybe kids start to ask, but it just blows everybody's mind. We never understand this because everything we experience in our life is contingent except God. And God is the one that just is.
That's right. And I think also, as the latter half of the question talks about, right, that he not only creates all things, but he sustains things. And so in that mode of recognizing God as source, as origin, as life, in the same way, when we wander, when we sin, when we fail, we maybe have the sudden fearful recognition that God's actually sustaining me in the midst of my wandering, that my ability to take another breath, to have another step, to do anything actually comes from him, as Jesus tells his disciples in John 15:5, right? You can do nothing apart from me.
Right.
to think that you're actually able to do this, like the very breath that you're using sometimes to speak against your creator is a gift from him. Your ability to think cogently, like the laws of logic, like all the things that we tend to take for granted, my safety, any free time to think, to contemplate. I mean, one of my favorite analogies to think about, how much we feel like we're in control, but really are not, is an earthquake, right? The earthquake just happens. And we all have that moment, at least if you're in a place that has earthquakes. You can insert tornado or other natural disaster here.
Right.
But you can't stop it. It's just happening. And I don't get to say like, well, maybe it'll be over now. I'm not in control of it at all. I'm just subject to this thing that's happening. And so in the same way, I think there's God simply is, and he invites us to participate in his life, and he sustains us at every moment. And the aim through, as the question talks about, that he sustains all things through his word, which is an allusion to Hebrews 1, which isn't actually cited in the catechism, but you can go read Hebrews 1 about how Christ sustains all things through his word. And then the Spirit, and it cites Psalm 104, which is exactly the text that I would want to go to as well, right? That the Spirit is actually giving us life. Origen would talk about this, that the Spirit is the one who is returning us back to the Father. And he's kind of preparing the ground so that when we receive the word, receive Christ, we actually go back to the Father. And so this is God like sustaining us in the midst of our failure, in the midst of difficulties, and in all those things, actually trying to draw us back to himself, who is our source and is our life.
I love it. I want to participate in the life of him who continues to breathe life into me. I want to use the life he gives me, not to rebel against him, but to connect with him, to love him, to adore him, and to worship him. And I want to invite you all to do that too, to take the life that he continues to breathe into you and use that life to seek his face and to see him face to face. May God give us grace to do that today. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. God bless.